Hi everyone. Today video is on use Azure Cache for Redis in ASP.NET Core application using distributed cache technique. Okay, in .NET 6. What is Redis cache? Redis is an open source in-memory data structure store used as a database cache. It supports data structures like strings, hashes, lists, sets, stored sets with range queries, etc. Okay, so let's understand the flow of Redis cache. Okay, user request a page from the web application. Okay, here is the user requesting a page for the web application. Okay, web application queries the Redis stores. Okay, if the application is configured with Redis cache, then application what it will do means first it will queries the Redis store. Okay, if the data exists, then fetches the data and returns the response directly to the user. So server application first check with the Redis cache. If the data exists, then it will fetch the data and it directly return to the user. Okay. If no data is in the Redis store, then application queries the database and fetches the data and next save the same data into the Redis store so that subsequent request or subsequent user request can consume the data from the Redis store directly and finally returns the response to the user. So if at all data is not in the Redis store, then application will fetches the data from the database. Okay, once application gets the data from the database, it will store that data into the Redis so that subsequent requests to the application from any user will get the response directly from the Redis store. Okay, once it stores the data into the Redis store, then response is given back to the user. So if some other user comes and requests the application, since the data is already stored in the Redis cache, it will directly return from the Redis cache and return to the user. Okay, so application performance will be increased. Let's deploy the Redis cache server in the Azure. Okay, so please log into your Azure portal. Okay, homepage look like this. Okay, now first create a resource. For that, click here and on left hand side select databases and select Azure cache for Redis. Okay, now we are going to see a form for creating the Redis cache. Okay, so subscription, select your subscription here. Okay, and resource group. Resource group is nothing but a creator, or you can treat it like a folder. Okay, create a resource group. Okay, and domain. This domain will be the URL for your Redis server. Okay, I'm just entering my domain, my name as my domain. Here are the plans. So you can click here to view all the plans. So by default for learning also you won't get a free plan. You have to pay, but there is very various minimum plans where we can choose like basic one. So for learning purpose, you can choose this plan. Okay. So next click on the and it is a network and it will be by default public network. Based on plan, these connections will be shown for you. Okay, mine is very basic, right? And here you can select the version, like latest version, Redis version. Okay, and here are the tags if you want to add. And finally, click on create. Okay, since I have already created a Redis instance, I am not going to create. So I have just shown you the flow. So here is my already created resource group for my Redis server. Okay, so here is my Azure Cache for Redis. Okay. So now we have our Azure instance of Redis Cache. Okay. Now let's create a .NET 6 Web API application. So here I am using .NET CLI for creating my .NET 6 application. So command is like .NET 6 space new space type of the project, that is Web API, space -o space your name of the project. Okay. Let's create the project. Project is successfully created. Let me open my project in Visual Studio Code Editor. So here is my API project and target framework is .NET 6.0. So to communicate with Redis instance, Microsoft has provided us a library, that is Microsoft.extensions.caching.stack exchange Redis. So this is the required NuGet we have to install. Visual Studio developers, please copy the command from the package manager. Since I am using .NET CLI, I am going to copy the command from here. So let's install the cache package. And first thing is we have to add the configuration section for our Redis instance into our application. So please go to appsettings.development.json file. Here add connection string. Inside of it, define our property for Redis cache connection string. Okay. So my connection string I named as Azure Redis connection. So now we have to get the Redis connection string. So our instance is Azure, right? So we have to go to our Redis instance at our Azure server. Okay. So once you have created your resource group successfully, you will see here. Okay, resource group. Or you can click here for your all resource groups. In that, select your appropriate resource group. Okay, mine is Redis Cache RZ. I am selecting this resource group. Inside of it, I have Azure Cache for Redis instance. So please select it. Okay. So on left hand side, under settings, you can see access keys. Navigate there, and you can see here like primary key, secondary key, constant strings. Okay. So you can copy the primary connection string. Okay. And paste it over here. Now we have to register the cache service at our program.cs file. Okay. Add stack exchange Redis cache. Okay. So this configuration is nothing but expecting a connection string of our Redis instance. So we have to assign the connection string. For that, okay, get connection string, and here you can pass your connection string name. Okay. Now let's create a model. Okay, which is nothing but a API response model. Okay. First create a folder model. So this model is nothing but a model or a DTO or VM. Okay, anything. So here I am calling as model. So I will create like God. So this is my model class. Let me add some properties. Okay, finally my model response model looks like this. Now let's add a sample controller. Okay, I will name it like car controller. So here is our sample controller. Okay, now .NET has support many different type of cache approaches like in-memory cache, okay, and Redis cache, SQL Server cache, etc. Okay. So the great thing what Microsoft did is it provided a single interface, okay, where you can configure any one of the type of cache. Okay. So that interface is called iDistributed cache. Okay. So what is iDistributed cache interface? iDistributed cache interface implemented from the Microsoft extensions dot caching distributed library. Okay. iDistributed cache is not specific to Redis cache. This we have discussed. But it was implemented like a generic which support all kind of distributed caches like Redis, SQL, etc. Okay. iDistributed cache supports the default dependency injection for .NET Core. Okay. So it can be easily injected into the application wherever we need. Okay. iDistributed cache interface holds set of methods that helps to make our work with cache very easy. Those are like get, get async. So synchronous and asynchronous methods are available from the iDistributed cache. For fetching, we have to use get and get async. For saving, we have to use set and set async. For deleting, we have to use remove and remove async. Okay. Now let me inject iDistributed cache interface into my constructor. Now, let me create some fake data. So that data I pretend like I am fetching from the database and I am going to store that data into Redis store and I am going to fetch the data from the Redis store. So let me create some fake data. So this is my fake data. Now let's create a action method where we are going to save the data into the Redis store and trying to fetch the same data from the Redis store if it is exist in the Redis store. Okay. So when user request arrives at server, server first checks at the Azure Redis cache. Okay. So first I am going to check for the data at the Redis cache. Okay. Cache get async to fetch the data. So here we need to pass the key. So here what is key? Okay. So in Redis, data will be stored as a key value pair, means like a dictionary. We are going to specify a key. To that key, some data will be stored at the Redis store. So to fetch the data from the Redis store, we have to use the same key. Okay, let's pretend like uh, my key is car store. Okay, so here I'm checking, trying to get the data from the Redis store where its key is car store. So for this key, the available data will be returned from the Redis store. Okay. So this get async returns byte array of data. That means our data will be stored as a encrypted bytes in the Redis store. Okay. So here what I am doing, whether the data is exist in the Redis store or not. So that I am finding by checking the count of the array. If it is greater than zero, so if it greater than zero, I got something from the Redis store. Okay. But we cannot return bytes data to our end user, right? We have to serialize so that it can be responded as a JSON. So we have to serialize the data for that. Okay, here I am getting a string from the byte array of data. Okay, source equal to JSON serializer, okay, dot deserialize to collection of car. Okay, okay. So here, what I am doing, we get the byte of data from the Redis store. That data is serialized back to string, and that string is serialized back to our response type. So finally, we can return the data directly to the users. Okay, this is the case when we have data at the Redis store. If there is no data at the Redis store, then application fetches the data from the database, then stores the same data into the Redis store and return the response back to the user. So any other request comes, they can directly consume the data that was stored in the Redis store. Okay. After the if condition, the code executes when we don't have a data at the Redis store. Then we have to fetch the data from the database. So here what I did, I created a fake data, right? So that is my database. Okay. So first I want to store the database value into the Redis store. So, but I cannot directly save the object into the Redis store, right? I have to convert it as a bytes of data. To do that, first I need to convert it as a string, and I can pass my fake data. Okay, I'm serializing this data into string. Next, I need to convert the string as byte array. Okay, I can pass the string. Okay, now I have the byte of data. Now I have to store this byte of data into my Redis store. So to save, we have to use the set async or set method. So while setting, we have to specify the key. What is our key? Car store, comma, and my byte array of data. Okay. So here we are setting in the Redis store for this key. This is the data need to be stored. Okay. So now I can return the data to the user. Directly return the fake data. So next time when the request comes, since already here we stored, right? Here itself logic gets executed. Okay. So for our understanding, here I will do a trick in the response. I will add one additional property like is Redis. Yes, it is Redis from Redis, loading from Redis. Okay. And data will be cars. Same way, data will be fake data, and this is false. Purely for our understanding, I am adding this property. Okay. So we can determine from where the data is loaded. Okay. Let's decorate our method with HTTP. So now let's run and test the output. Okay. So here is my endpoint. Let me run it. So first request is Redis will be false. That means data is loaded from my fake database. Okay. Now if I again execute, see, is Redis is true. That means data is coming from the Redis store. Okay. So now let's understand how to clear the cache from the Redis. For that, let me create a one more endpoint. So this is my action method. It will have input like key. That key is nothing but our Redis store key. Okay. So particular key I want to delete. So that key I am passing here as an input parameter. And cache dot remove async. Okay. Remove async will delete the particular key we have passed. Okay. Let me define route as well. Let's test it. Okay, now we have two endpoints. First, let's execute first endpoint itself. Okay, it is loading from the Redis, right? Now I want to clear it. Okay, for that we need to have key. Copy the key and try to execute the second endpoint. And enter the key here as a query parameter and execute. And it is showing 200 response. To confirm it, if I execute this first endpoint, I should get false because cache is cleared. So let me execute it. See, false because cache is cleared. So that is how clearing cache works. Okay. And next I want to talk about expiration. By default, there is no expiration time for Redis. If you store Redis, some value into the Redis, it will be there for lifelong. Okay, so it is always recommended to use some expiration, at least like days. Okay, so how to enable the expiration? So to enable the expiration, okay, here we have an option. While saving, we will have an option. Okay, so here what I will do, expiration equal to new entry options. Okay, here we will have two type of expiration. First is absolute expiration to relative to now. That means this is actual expiration for the Redis key. Okay, so once the time is crossed this limit, automatically Redis server will clean up the data at the store. Okay, okay. So let me test this expiration. So here it has set has a overloaded method where we can pass our expiration data. Okay. Okay, now test. So after 20 seconds, my key will be expired. Okay. So first let's clear the cache. Okay. Now cache is cleared. Now execute the first endpoint to store the data into the Redis store. Okay. Now execute again. Okay. Now it executed. Now wait for 20 seconds. So now I am running again after 20 seconds. Now I am expecting this will be false, means it will be load from fake database because expiration removes the data at the Redis store. See, expiration is successfully working. Okay. Now there is one more type of expiration. Okay, that is sliding expiration. So what is sliding expiration? Sliding expiration means it is a kind of expiration whenever, okay, whenever the particular key is not consumed, okay, for particular amount of time, like an ideal time, no user is consuming that resource at that time, it will delete that record. Okay, so that means it is no longer being used by the users. So it is waste of storing at the server, right? So it is one of the nice option to delete them. So sliding expiration is works like that. So it should be less than absolute expiration. Keep that in mind because it is senseless if we give the sliding expiration more than the original expiration. Okay, because it should be always less than the absolute expiration. Okay. So what I will do, I will just give sliding expiration as 10 seconds. That means if my car store key is not communicated for 10 seconds by any application, then this gets automatically deleted at the server. That is sliding expiration. So let's test it. First, let's clear the cache. Okay. Now go to our endpoint, execute. Okay, it is loading from fake database. Now execute again. Okay, it is loading from Redis second. So now the expiration is 20 seconds. Sliding expiration is 10 seconds. Now let's wait 10 seconds. Okay. So now I am executing after 10 seconds. See, sliding expiration also works. Okay. So that's all about the consuming the Azure Redis cache into our .NET 6 application using the high distributed cache technique. I hope this video has delivered some useful information to you all. So if you like my content, please support me by subscribing to my channel. Soon we are going to meet with new concepts. Until then, signing off.